Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Upstart and Crow. We're a nonprofit literary space where we like to connect readers, writers, and everyone in between so that we can create and really further storytelling within our own lives and for those in the future and from those in the past that moving forward. My name's Harry. I'll be your host tonight. My pronouns are he, him. And a little bit about me. My background is Taiwanese and English, tracing it to my mom's and dad's side. My mom's from Taiwan. My dad's roots are from England. And I've been in the city since I was born. And I'm part of the literary community here. So very happy to be hosting everyone. Welcome everyone. Yeah, we have some extra seats so we can. And so, a little bit of housekeeping first. If you're looking for the washroom, it is behind those doors, just over to the corner. If you need any water, or if you need any hot water or tea, come find me. I can bring it out to you from the back. And one question I didn't ask, is photos and videos okay for tonight?
I was going to ask people. Yeah.
That sounds good. I'll let you do stuff. And then we also have books for sale behind the desk and all over this place. And last but not least, I want to do a territorial acknowledgement to really ground us in tonight's event. And so I want to acknowledge that we are on the unceded territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh peoples. I say this with deep respect and reverence for the deep history here and for the history that we are part in the making of through the building of relationships, through the different organizing that happens on the ground, and also with the community that's built in places of resistance. And so I say that also with in connection to Palestine as well, with Gaza, and wanting to really create the container so that we can think about liberation through the lens of land, but also labor as well, which I think is a very key component to how we got here in the first place. And so without further ado, I'd like to pass it off to Libby to moderate. Please give a warm welcome, everyone.
Well, thank you very much, Harry. The first thing I should say is that even though I'm holding a microphone, it's not really a microphone. It's for Jace over here, who is very kindly videotaping our event. So it's for the video. So if you're wondering why my voice is not amplified, that's why. First of all, thank you so much, Henry, for giving us for giving us a very warm welcome. This is a wonderful space to be in, and it kind of reminds me, it's small and intimate. And I love Russian novels, old Russian novels, when they used to have all those salons, when they would have, I feel like we should have some music here and we'd have a famous author and we'd have a salon. So it sort of reminds me of something like that. But thank you all so much for coming and also for doing the land acknowledgement. And for sure, the land acknowledgement in terms of our journey for truth and reconciliation is so akin to what is happening for Palestinians and loss of land and domination and occupation. So there are so many parallels. So I know that we're all very mindful of that. We're here tonight to do a Vancouver launch for this wonderful book, Razing Palestine, which I know you've probably heard about. That's why you're here. And the first thing I'd like to do is just thank the editor, Leila Marshy. She's a publisher in Montreal, and she's quite prolific if you want to check out their website, Baraka Books. And I think she started this book about a year ago, maybe, and invited people to make these contributions about speaking out on Palestine and what it meant, what the cost of speaking out was. And I don't think anybody had really done that before. And it seemed like a really important topic, especially given what has happened over the past 2 years. But we're also talking about decades of speaking out and what that means, not only in Canada, but elsewhere. So we're really here tonight to not so much talk about the book, because we want you to buy it and read the stories, the very powerful, personal, political, cultural stories that are quite incredible, because it really brings to mind what people face on a daily basis in their work environment, a local community.
Recording in progress.
All good? Yep. So those stories are very powerful, but we also want to talk about why it is we need to tell these stories and share these stories. Why is it that we need to speak about history and sharing history and how it's reported, and what it means to us both personally, but in a larger sort of global sense. So there's many conversations that we can get into tonight. We'd really love for it to be very informal. We want it to be sort of a conversation. And as you can see, there's 3 of us here, and there's Amy, who is on the screen. Hello, Amy. Thank you so much for being here. We really welcome you. But I thought maybe and so I'm going to be sort of a very informal moderator, and we do want to leave a lot of time to have discussion and hear what you have to say. Maybe you have stories to tell as well about speaking out or how you feel about the issue of the genocide in Gaza and the occupation of the settlements. And in fact, I know on Facebook, somebody wrote to me and said, I got fired. I was a lawyer and I got fired. And I was like, wow. I mean, there are so many stories out there that we're not even hearing. So this is a time for us to share that kind of experience and information, and then think about, what do we do with that? What do we do with these stories? How do we move those experiences into more action and more solidarity for us in Canada, but also to have free Palestine? So I think what we thought we might do is just each of us introduce ourselves and maybe say a few words about how you came to be in the book. But I told them, don't get into your story. Don't tell your story, because we want people to buy the book to read the story. So they're all under strict instructions not to do that. I forgot to introduce myself. So I'm Libby Davies. And so I have a little story in the book. I'm a former member of Parliament and someone who has always spoken out about what's happening in Gaza, in Palestine, the occupation, even before I was a member of Parliament, and sometimes got into trouble for doing it. And so that story is in here a little bit. But I think my contribution is more about sort of political reflections about speaking out and what it means, like what kind of political environment are we still in Canada, and has it changed? I do want to tell you, I believe it has changed. It is somewhat easier to speak out now. It's better in social media, but then again, it's still horribly toxic, and people get beat up and they get threatened, and all of this stuff is still going on. Hence the book. So for me, I feel it's really important that we have public discourse that is respectful, and is not personalized, is not full of hatred. And so I think in the political arena, I know in the Parliament, there are now many more MPs who do speak out than used to be. It used to be that, well, if I went back to sort of the earlier days, it used to be a really good environment. I remember being on Parliament Hill where we would have big events, and the Canadian Arab Federation would come, and the leaders and MPs from all political parties, including the Conservatives, would show up and speak and bring greetings and enjoy food and music and culture and hear about what was going on. And then it all changed, and it was like a new kind of form of McCarthyism that descended in Canada under the Harper years, a decade, where if you said anything, it was like a toxic environment, and you were vilified, you were demonized, and so the issue of self-censorship. This is something that I really reflected on. The most powerful form of censorship is sometimes self-censorship, where you feel so afraid to speak. because of the consequences. So you remain silent. But that then it changed again, and it's now moved into a new political environment where there are many more people speaking out, and sometimes with dreadful consequences, but it is happening. So I feel like, I'm a very optimistic person. I feel like this is such a growing movement of solidarity with Palestine and Canada, and as usual, the people are way ahead of where the leaders are. And it's enormous, it's powerful. And so I feel actually optimistic. So having said that, I'm going to turn it over to Sean to say a few words about how you came to be in the book and just how you're feeling about things today.
Thanks, Libby, very much. I came to the book because I think we messaged each other on the evil Twitter, and you had told me about the book. But I guess the 2-minute version of why my account is in the book is that I was teaching at UBC as a sessional lecturer in the School of Population and Public Health, a leadership class that I was invited to redesign. And one day in January during a seminar, students asked me during a class if I had been asked not to speak about Gaza and the genocide in the School of Population and Public Health. One thing led to another, which eventually led me to not be reappointed, effectively fired for exercising academic freedom and speaking out about the genocide. So that's what brought me to this book.
Okay. And I'm also delighted to introduce Sara Kishawi, who's come here from Nanaimo and is a graduate of Vancouver Island. And now, Sara, you're not in the book. That's right. You're not in the book, but you do have a very incredible story to tell. So we would just love it if you could introduce yourself and say a little bit about your experience of speaking out, because it's not in the book, so it's okay to talk about it.
Thank you for the introduction. My name is Sara Kishawi. I'm from Gaza, Palestine. And I started at Vancouver Island University in the psychology program, but I moved to the sociology program. It just fit a lot more of what I was envisioning my work to be. In 2021 was really when I was feet on the ground with activism for Palestine during the escalation 2021. That didn't last very long, thank God, but we got introduced to people and made some connections. So when we started again in 2023, we immediately launched an on-campus and local campaign to stand against the genocide and for the liberation of Palestine. So it was both in Nanaimo and on campus. Our university, Vancouver Island University, it's a smaller university, it's not like a bigger one, and they were not quite used to people protesting on campus. And so their initial response, I think, was confusion about what to do with a protest. And then finding out that when a protest happened, they need to respond to students, I think that was a bit of a shocker for them. And so they took some actions against us that stemmed all the way from ignoring us to then suing us and taking us to court to remove protests and the encampment. So we had the longest running encampment in North America, and it was 110 days. It was the longest running in Canada and one of the first to go up. We had felt the university they weren't even telling us what their investments were, so we thought they were definitely hiding something. But we also thought it was the responsibility to talk about what's happening, especially under the lens of scholasticide and no universities being available for students in Gaza. And so we launched the encampment, and it was eventually taken down by the university with a court order. They were denied a police order, so we were not roughed up, but they did hire a private construction crew, I think, that came in hazmat suits to take down the encampment. During the encampment, they named 5 of us by name in the lawsuit. So all of us were doxxed, including myself. And after the court refused to make the student policy court mandated, the VIU launched their own investigations. They picked the 2 Palestinian students that went to campus and did an investigation, which then led to me and other person being suspended. So I got a 2-year suspension from Vancouver Island University after graduation. So I graduated in June of 2024. They did the investigation, the court, and all of that was in August and September. And eventually on October 4th, actually, I was suspended for the 2 years. So we just finished the 1 year. We have one more. We took VIU to court so that the suspension can be reviewed in a judicial review. We're waiting on a decision. No stake up to, I'm hearing a year. They said about 6 months. So we had just gotten heard at the beginning of October. So we have a couple more months to wait for a decision. But that kind of wraps up the story of our activism on campus. We have some stories from our local activism, including police not liking us showing up at Pierre Poilievre's actions. But that's generally how we've been reacted to when we spoke about Palestine in Nanaimo, which it is going towards a very conservative type of society there.
Thank you so much, Sara. So you're now awaiting the actually a court appearance, like a hearing in court that will happen.
We just finished the hearing. So we had a 2-day hearing. We're waiting for the decision, yes, which takes a while. The judge who heard us is very busy also, so we're not first in line for her decision.
I'm just curious, has there been a lot of support in Nanaimo for the students and for the encampment? Like, did you find a lot of people who were there as allies with you, or was it pretty alone?
I'm happy to say that the community in Nanaimo is actually very supportive. Our court dates, both days were from 9 a.m. to about 4 p.m. And both days throughout the whole, like all hours, the room was packed and there was a lineup outside waiting to rotate in. The officers would only let in a specific amount per rotation. And so the community is very supportive. Mm-hmm. However, there is definitely a large group that is very cautious with their support, where we see a lot more support on social media or through emails rather than in person. And that's because people are scared of what might happen or scared of how they might be perceived. But it is definitely changing from the beginning since we started protesting on October 12th, 2023. And now it's just a whole other story, and it's just so different than before.
Thank you. And next, I'd like to introduce Amy Blanding, who is on the screen there. And Amy, thank you so much for joining us. Now, you are in the book, so people will be able to read about what your experience has been. But if you'd like to just take a few minutes and sort of introduce yourself and how you came to be in the book, that would be great.
Sure. Thank you. Howdy, everyone. I can't see anyone, so I'm just going to continue feeling your energy and hope that you can hear me all right. I'm really grateful to be able to zoom in. I'm on Claytley Tene traditional territory known colonially as Prince George. I heard about the book through Sean, and in that brief exchange gained a very dear comrade. So I'm very grateful for that, Sean. Someday we'll meet in person. I've been engaged in legal battle for about a year and a half now. My outspokenness around Palestine, particularly my music, a song that I wrote called Sunbirds, got me into trouble with my employer. So I was employed as the Director of Inclusion, Diversity, Equity, and Accessibility for the Northern Health Authority. And long story that you can read, short, I was removed from my role for speaking out about Palestine on my personal time, with the caveat that compared to some of the other folks in the book, who were actively outspoken, made their voices loud and clear, the level of banality to what I actually did is kind of shocking. So I am very outspoken and have a lot of opinions and have a lot of things to say about the genocide. But the particulars of exactly precisely what I did do will probably blow your mind because, I've been engaged. I sued the Northern Health Authority. I also have another lawsuit against 2 Zionist community members here in Prince George. who were 2 of 11 signatories on a letter that defamed me and was the catalyst for what happened to me at Northern Health. So I'm engaged in 2 battles. We will be going to court to look through the claim with Northern Health at the end of July, and the other lawsuit will be seen in court in November. So if things go as they should, we're talking about a 2-year engagement in the justice system, which is, like all things told, pretty quick. I'm learning a lot about the judicial system through this process. And it's not the place that I typically find myself to be, I guess, more in the spotlight relative to a situation like this. I work in HR, supporting folks behind the scenes in terms of employee rights and equity. But this process has really forced me to recognize my privilege in a very new way. I was in a position making $133,000 a year, very highly educated, very, very privileged, and my rights were stripped away in an instant. Since I've been engaged in this process, when I first filed the lawsuits quite publicly, it was a daily occurrence, then it became weekly, and now every couple of months, I receive communication from folks reaching out with stories of similarly being oppressed in the workplace, not necessarily about speaking out about Palestine. Some instances, yes, but an insidious amount of silencing that's happening in public sector organizations, in HR, in my former employer's organization. And so all of that is fodder to continue pushing this forward, despite the toll that it takes and the work and the financial burden to engage in 2 lawsuits. But I'm in a very, like I said, privileged position. I have a lot of community support. One of my lawsuits my legal fees are being covered by a beautiful anonymous donor for the time being. And I have an incredible legal team that is supporting the other lawsuit in anticipation of a win that I would pay them back. So I'm in the process of seeing these through, and to the end that potentially we have the opportunity to set precedent in Canadian court to prove that being anti-Israel is not anti-Semitic, which hasn't been proven in a Canadian court yet. And so, there's an opportunity here, and one that I'm very, very committed to taking. And we'll see what happens. I guess I'll leave it at that for now.
That's a great introduction, Amy. And I mean, it's a great segue too, because it just raises so many questions that we kind of, it's easy to focus on the actual act of speaking out and what happens. But I don't think we really pay a lot of attention to the really long-term consequences. As you say, like lawyers, bills, the daily impact, and how long it goes on. I mean, Sara, you've now gone through this for just because of what you participated in at Vancouver Island University. Sean, it's still ongoing for you. So maybe that's a thread we can pick up to talk a little bit about what does it mean for your life today? Like, is it still something that you're just dealing with? Like, Sean, I know you're at the University of Regina. Like, what is it like there? Are you facing the same kind of thing? Or, like, how is it for you now?
So I'm part-time professor at the University of Regina. My area is occupational health and safety, so it doesn't really relate to what we're talking about tonight. But it's a different climate for academic freedom at the University of Regina than it is at UBC. And in particular, the Faculty of Medicine at UBC, which is where the School of Population Public Health is located. I would echo what Amy shared about privilege. I enjoy a tremendous amount of privilege, and I haven't paid the types of professional and personal costs that others in the book have paid, to be honest with you. I've lost some sleep. I've lost friendships. There's things I don't know. People stop talking to you. But you gained so much too through this work. So, we've connected, and Sara and we've connected at some of the marches in Victoria, and Amy and I have connected, and with so many groups like Jewish Faculty Network. We've got Jerry and Annalee here, and other colleagues, Faculty for Palestine at the University of Regina and UBC. So there's a network there that is there for support independent Jewish voices. I want to acknowledge their work as well. On social media, it's toxic. Like call it anti-Semite in every way possible, which is untrue, but it still comes, right? And Norman Spector, he's taken a couple runs at me, and they don't know anything about my case, but it doesn't feel pleasant to, it's just not a good feeling to have these things thrown at you.
Yeah. And Sara, how is it impacting your life now? Like, are you hoping to continue studies as a student, or are you moving on to some other area? And how is this kind of moving with you? Is it sort of like a presence that it's a shadow that's there that you got to get through? How does that make you feel?
Right. I think obviously with a sociology degree, it's something you have to continue with. You can't do much with a sociology bachelor. I am, fortunate in some connections and some careers that I had while studying so that I could, fall back onto. However, yes, there is the university holding my transcripts, but also the suspension being on record and something that we'll have to disclose in every application that we make, and you have to say why you were suspended. But for me, that doesn't even compare to the need and the duty to speak out against the genocide. And since the beginning, we have been, as Students for Palestine in Nanaimo, but also for myself and in our family, that's our number one goal. As Palestinians, us just being here is number one, a privilege, but two, means that we have to at least shoulder some of what's going on, especially when we see our people going through it, our families, our friends. And so that is something, we think about, and it does, raise our hopes. And when we realize that privilege and what we can do here that we wouldn't be able to do in Gaza. Of course, there is the side of we were doxxed, me and my whole family. We got doxxed on Twitter, the evil Twitter. And that caused some people to start, sending us messages or sending me in particular messages. I get, at least now once a week where it's like a very serious type of threat. Sometimes they range all the way over to death threats that we're getting from people in the community or online, including, some that were very adamant that they were going to find us in the street or run us over by a truck. And these are things that are being said. And in the moment, it's shocking. It's very alarming. It's like, is this person actually serious? Are they going to go out on their truck and look for us, right? But at the same time, it's, we're cautious. We try to do our best in reporting these and making sure that we're being careful. Because at the end of the day, it doesn't even compare to being carpet bombed and starved to death. And so that's our comparison.
Yeah. Well, one of the questions that we wanted to address tonight was, why is this book important? Right? I mean, we can talk about that on a personal level, but why is it important in kind of a broader context of public discourse in Canada? And just to begin that sort of conversation, I know for me, like when I was speaking out in Parliament and I got in trouble for talking about the Nakba, I remember going through this huge thing where, for example, Bob Rae, who was at the time the interim leader of the Liberal Party, went after me in the most vicious way, in a sort of a press release statement, calling for my resignation, accusing me of starting an intifada. And it was just like so absurd. And I remember thinking about, wow, I need to sue this guy. And I did go talk to a lawyer. And what he said was, well, you guys are politicians. It's sort of in the public realm. He's probably got very deep pockets. You probably don't have deep pockets. Yeah, that's right. And you may not win. And it sort of struck me that, two of you are involved in legal cases, and Sean, you are, so three of you. So just the financial. So I didn't go ahead and sue Bob Rae because I figured, I probably wouldn't get anywhere, even though he was hateful and untruthful, and I've never forgiven him. I mean, he's like this, making a big deal about how he's at the UN. And I was thinking, like, this guy's for human rights. Like, there are certain times in history what side you're on or how you speak out really matters. And he failed that one. So just the legal consequences alone are really incredible within, whether it's the universities or your workplace. And I just wonder, like, how do you cope with that? Like, do you feel like you have strong support around you? I mean, Amy, you said you've got someone who's supporting you with costs. What about in the broader community in Prince George? Is it still an issue for you?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I think it's important to recognize that the folks that sent the letter about me to my
book, right? The letter that she got sent, you reprinted it in full, and it's horrendous to read this letter.
Yeah, it's not actually in full in the book, but there are excerpts. Yeah, and I mean, you can grab it from the Vancouver courthouse if you want to read the thing in its entirety, but it's trash. So, don't waste your money. But it's, if you were to pull Zionist rhetoric off the internet, you could probably guess what was being said. But to that end, I'm not the only person that has suffered at the hands of these folks. A small, very small group of folks in Prince George who have harassed others, who have attempted to or contacted other employers, to do the same thing, attempt to do the same thing to them as they had done to me. So it is still a problem. We have a small but mighty group of protesters out every week with a lot of community support, or seemingly community support. But I think, something that this has revealed is, you don't get a lot of opportunities in your life to take sort of your theoretical morality and see where it actually falls when shit hits the fan. And that's been really revealing, I think, for all of us over the past, since, for the past 2 years, is folks that you thought would not stop for or not worry about speaking up, who self-censor, or who like to come up to me and quietly and whisper, what happened to you was horrible, but I can't say anything about it, or a quick message of support. A friend of mine, a Palestinian friend of mine, says, like, this is a Canadian thing. We like to be silently supportive, versus other countries where we're seeing this like large scale outrage and vocalization of what's happening. So I do think it's something that we socially, as a society, Canada, really, let's get it together. We are still so passive about being outspoken, and the implications can't be understated. I just got a new job 6 weeks ago, and that's after a year and a bit of unemployment. I'm highly employable, and I haven't been able to get a job in my field. outside of my field. And there's a reason for that. I have been blacklisted because of what has happened to me. And, I don't want to be hired by an organization that doesn't want me there and has, alternative viewpoints to me. But yeah, it's had a huge impact on my employment trajectory. It's also afforded me an amazing opportunity to sort of reflect on what it is that I want and what I want to do moving forward. But yeah, it has a huge impact. But I would echo what Sara says, like, it's hard to begrudge the feeling too much when, Israel just bombed Gaza and South Lebanon. Like, I'm okay. I'm okay. And there are good people doing the good work. And this is our obligation, our responsibility. And yeah, it's not about me. It never was.
Sean or Sara, do you want to add anything to that? Like,
Sure. I think what I'll say is when we took our cases to both when we fought the injunction, we knew we weren't going to not get an injunction. It was at the end of the day a private property discussion, and there's nothing the Canadian court system values more than private property in that argument. And so we knew we weren't going to get to keep the encampment. And same with the case now with the judicial review of the suspension is we don't really have expectations about what the response is going to be or what the judgment is going to be. However, for us, it was enough that it was at least heard in court, and we get to submit these documents and this evidence and these definitions into the court system. Like, for example, we got to introduce anti-Palestinian racism in the injunction case, and we got to show how the university was being Islamophobic by putting in the documents and evidence of the actions that they had taken against us. It wasn't just suspensions and court cases, but it was also very minor things compared to that happened on campus, like being followed by security to washrooms or having our bags searched in the library in front of everyone. And so I think to us it was worth it to take that route of going to court, of making it a whole public spectacle, I guess you could say, just so that, one, it puts attention on what's happening on us, and then that triangulates to Palestine. In fact, Palestine had not been mentioned in local media as much as it had during the encampment or during the judicial review case, because for the reporters to reference what's happening, they needed to connect it. Otherwise, it just made no sense, right? And so that, for us, was worth it, because if even just one person who had read the news or saw the headline then wondered, oh, what's happening in Palestine, or even took it a step further thinking, okay, these students are going out to protest like that, what can I do at least as an individual? I think that to us was enough as a stance. I will also add that to your point, Amy, on the quiet support that we get from people, at times what I had felt was this disconnect from a huge group of people, particularly after an action by the university, like a suspension or people calling the police or things like that. And the disconnect was under the theme of, what is it that we're doing so wrong that people don't see the point here or don't see that genocide is wrong? And that has caused some feelings of disconnect or just not understanding what people are going through. It never made us question our position. Genocide is wrong, but it does make us question people and how people are navigating their own lives while a genocide is going on. And I'll be honest, I felt a little bit of resentment towards people who gave that quiet support, to a point where I didn't feel that resentment towards open and loud Zionists, because you could talk against those people. You could see where they're wrong and where the moral unclarity was there. But the quiet support and people that were saying, oh, I can't say anything, but I support you, or here's a quick, long email about how I think the encampment is good for you guys, that made me feel quite a bit of resentment, I think, towards people, because we are speaking out. So people should be able to do so as well. Sometimes I'm not as resentful of it. Sometimes I'm like, yeah, it's nice you support Palestine on the quiet. But most of the time, it's like we are witnessing one of the greatest atrocities in modern history. We are witnessing a genocide. And I do not want to have a discussion about anything except that, because it's something so urgent that needs to be stopped.
And Sean, maybe you can add to that just and sort of segue into, like, do you feel that the public environment, the political environment is improving, or is it, or like, how does that feel to you from what you see? Like, is it easier to speak out now? Or is it's really sort of just a total mixed bag, isn't it?
You got to take a step back from the day to day, because, I just, Senator Wu just posted, and that they're speaking out about the tribunal, Palestine tribunal that they had on the weekend in room bookings. And then one of the guests was kind of questioned for 4 hours at the airport.
Richard Falk. I mean, God, this eminent person who was held at the border for 4 hours.
And that's, there's just so much, and that's the tip of the iceberg. I mean, this happens every day. I think it's getting better. I mean, I think the book, like when it arrived, I couldn't put it down. I just love this book. It's just so compelling, the stories. And I'm not just saying that because we're at a book launch, but it's very compelling. And I think the stories are also very empowering as well. And I think this is 23 people have contributed to the book and basically said, we're not afraid, and we're going to tell about our experience. And we're going to shed light on how institutions and systems were weaponized, right, to silence people. And so I find that very empowering, and I think others do as well. I see it, I see the flag raisings at city halls, which is, I think, felt very good. It's symbolic. And I see a desperation now from Zionist organizations. I think they're afraid, they're desperate. They're acting out in the open now, and they're losing in court. And these are all, like, Dr. Yiping Ji has a case on, and there's so many cases going on now. And these are all kind of like community cases, if you think of them. They're, to echo what Amy said, I mean, it's not about us, it's about a community, and it's about Palestinian solidarity. And that's sort of what we're putting forward. And we're gonna get there. We're gonna use these systems. In my case, the grievance arbitration process at UBC. And thank you to UBC Faculty Association for the representation in that. So I think it's getting better. That's a long-winded response.
No,
Libby.
it's
I
great.
apologize, but I do think it's getting better. But the day-to-day, it can be discouraging.
Yeah.
But I think it's desperate at this stage.
Yeah. I mean, we haven't talked about the media yet, and but it seems to me that one of the reasons this book is really important is because it's telling a truth that often does not get represented in the media. I'm one of the board members at Canadians for Justice and Peace in the Middle East, a national organization, and they have a great project called the Media Accountability Project, and they have a group of volunteers across the country every day who go through every media, examining and analyzing from a very objective point of view what the story is about, how descriptions are given, is there anti-Palestinian racism, and then they actually follow it up, and they have demanded apologies from the National Post, from the CBC, from all kinds of publications, and actually had some very good advances on that. So it kind of strikes me that it's sort of like a duality. It really does remind me of McCarthyism, and I'm not old enough to have gone through that, but I've talked to many people, even people who came to Canada from the US because of McCarthyism, whether it was in the film industry or whether it was in the academic arena. And so it seems so reminiscent of that. And what I find, there's so many contradictions. We think of ourselves as this great Canadian liberal society, democracy, right? And yet, I mean, I'm very struck by, I think it was Amy, you said how easy it is for people to be, and Sarah, you said it too, that as Canadians, we're very quiet. We sort of say, well, we support you, but we just have to be careful. But we have this illusion that we're this great liberal democracy, and yet so much of what is taking place, these little microaggressions. I mean, I'm thinking of what Olivia Chow is facing right now, the mayor of Canada's biggest city, because she spoke about the genocide at the Canadian National Muslim Association. And I don't know if any of you saw the sort of the the letter, I forget the name of the organization. It's like such a far right Zionist organization. It was so hateful, basically saying she has to be boycotted, that she's not to be invited to any Jewish organization in Toronto to speak, to be present. I mean, it was like, wow, this is happening in our country, right? And so I'm trying to imagine the pressure that she's feeling from that, the divisiveness of it. But on the other hand, I feel like at least it's out in the open, right? And it's being fought on so many different levels now. And the Media Accountability Project is just one. Your court cases are other levels on a personal level. So yeah, I mean, maybe we could speak a little bit about what it is we think that people can do. Like, how can people speak out? I mean, we all have different levels, right? We do have, some people are happy to be at rallies every week, and that's fantastic. You were part of the student encampment. I know my son is very involved at UBC as a staff member. He's sort of found his level. How can we encourage people to be involved in a way that they can feel stronger themselves, so they don't feel that sense of, oh my God, I'm scared, I can't do this? I mean, any ideas about that? Amy, why don't we go to you? I mean, have you seen that in your community? How people are getting involved and what that leads to? Is it a good thing that's happening?
Thanks. Yeah, I think to answer that question, I kind of want to back up and just speak to the last piece and just be really honest. I'm not sure what makes us think that organizations and institutions that are founded on racism and oppression are actually ever going to get to a place where they end up serving the oppressed. So, that's very anarchist of me, of course. But the answer to that is collective liberation. And so, the movement that we're seeing for Palestine mirrors the movement fighting ICE in Chicago. It's the movement of the Wet'suwet'en protecting land. These aren't just metaphors that match. These are actions, boots on the ground actions that show us how to fight back. And I think it's really important for folks to take a step back and recognize that there's a distinction between activism and organizing, and they're both really important. But I think a lot of folks assume that the way to, quote, get involved is to become an activist. I need to show up to a rally. I need to write a letter to the editor. And again, I don't want to discount or undermine those actions because I think they're really important. I would also say that, they haven't done the work of actually stopping the violence. So, but what does work? Mutual aid, actually showing up for community members in your community, actually showing folks what it looks like when you circumvent the system and you do what you need to do to meet folks where they're at, to actually practice liberatory harm reduction, to actually figure out new ways of working or perhaps bringing in old ways of working. I'm really fascinated by the legal system right now and the fact that we have this, 150-year-old system that's done a lot of harm, but we also have these amazing systems like the Nishka or the GetGat or other folks that have had governance systems that have worked for a very, very long time and can be teachers for all of us. So I think when you ask the question, what can be done? I think as Canadians, as people who are connected to other people, we got to get creative and actually legitimately think outside of the box, because the box is burning us alive. The box is fucking us over. So why are we staying in the box? And for myself, like, honestly, that's like showing up at my new job with my keffiyeh, with my, like, this is straight up who I am. This is how I work. I will protect you. I will fight for your rights as employees. This is what I stand for. This is what I won't stand for. How are we going to care for each other? And what do I need to do to, like, massage, manipulate, or completely circumvent the system? When you stop being scared of that, it's super liberating. And this is coming from a place of someone who, like, I was scared of that and I got burned anyway. Like, I toed the party line. I did what I had to do. I, went through the sort of bureaucratic pieces of working in government, and I still got fired. So what's holding me back? What's holding anyone back? And I'm saying this again, recognizing privilege. Like, if you are someone who can't afford to say the things or do the things because you need a paycheck or you need to get food on the table, absolutely. But, like, we have not used our creativity. And we see examples of this globally, like the Freedom Flotilla. That is crowdsourced, 100% organizing, international organizing at an incredible level to say, you're not going to listen to us. Politicians are ignoring us. We're going to get ourselves there. And eventually they will break through. If it's not the first flotilla, it's the next. If it's not the first wall, it's the next. And, like, we saw it in the movie Ants. Like, there are a heck of a lot more ants than there are vicious grasshoppers. So
All right.
I don't know. I guess that's my answer.
Yeah, it's a good answer. So Sara and Sean, how would you like to see people engage better? Like, so let's get out of the box, be creative, just put it out there. What would you like to see people do?
I think for me, when I envision the space, and I said this before, it's kind of like a tagline, but protests on the ground and in the streets don't have a dress code. And so if your work dress code is, I don't know, high heels or a suit or whichever, that doesn't mean that you're exempt from attending on the ground work. Because when we are on the streets, when we are protesting, when we are marching, at the very least, what that does is raise awareness. And we're all the way across the world from Gaza. And so we can't go march and fight. But what we can do is raise awareness and show that the government, because they are watching, that we're not going to just sit in our homes and be silent while a genocide that we're funding is going on.
Mm-hmm. And so being visible, being really visible is important.
Absolutely. I think we should break all levels. There's no levels, I think, to activism. The movements, the marches are either being called by a student or someone who's a 22-year-old who thought, oh, genocide is wrong. That's not me, by the way. I'm not 22. But we just need to break through those levels instead of looking at them as levels and selecting where you feel comfortable. One, we need to realize that we shouldn't feel comfortable at all during a genocide. That's the normal thing, is to not feel okay, not feel normal, and to then just look at it as a wide space that we just navigate through. And whether that being boycotting and then saying this and doing that, we can do all that stuff at the same time. And when we're all collectively doing it together, it becomes safer for all of us.
Right.
The institution's not going to fire every single person, but when 2 people speak out, they're going to fire those 2 people. But when there's 20 people speaking out, they're not going to fire 20 people. That's just not realistic. And so same with the students. I will say that a student movement or the student encampment is called a student one symbolically, because students and universities symbolically are a place of discussion. It's a place of intellectual discussion, and that is why they're called that. However, they are community movements. The encampment couldn't have gone with just students. It went with the whole community supporting it, and even the whole community coming out and sitting. When we had the police called on us, the entire community came up to campus and sat with the students. And so as soon as we take out all these levels, and we also take out groups, and students, we have students for Palestine, faculty for Palestine, and that's good for resource management. But when we're on the ground and when we are going against a genocide, it shouldn't be this action is just for students or this action is just for politicians. It's everyone is at every action, and whichever group has the resources to give to that action or that is more appropriate, that is how you separate the groups. So I hope that made sense.
Yeah, makes total sense. Sean?
I just have a couple quick thoughts. I mean, first of all, Sarah, thank you for everything that you and your comrades have done in Nanaimo. It's very inspiring. The students have led the way, really. And thank you. So I think as, a teacher, faculty member, I think it's very important that we support students and we protect them. When they're subject to a smear campaign or other reprisals, we have a responsibility to do that. The other thing I wanted to mention was, or share, is a quote from a colleague who's now Dr. Shannon Dee, who's now provost at St. Mary's University, used to be the Dean of Arts at the University of Regina. She has a great line here. It's the best way to defend academic freedom is to use it.
Right.
And for heaven's sakes, we have charter rights, use them to the extent that you can. You feel safe doing so, but they're there, use them. That's the best way to defend them. And then apologies, Amy, I'm going to mention an institution here that we could use in the struggle, labor unions. If you are a member of a labor union, we've got my Labor for Palestine shirt on tonight. Resolutions at convention is very important. Mobilizing through your union, very important. I had the opportunity to attend Unifor's national convention in Vancouver in August, and they passed a resolution. There was a Nelson Mandela Award for the president of the Palestinian Journalist Syndicate, and so lots of visibility there. And if we look back at the anti-apartheid movement in the 1980s, labor played an enormous role in that, going back to the 1970s. And I think if we can organize within the union, I think that's very important. And the resources are there too.
Right.
Very, very important. The boycott, divestment, sanction, that's also another thing. I think we haven't talked a lot about that, but that's very important. We're on the same trajectory. There's similarities and differences with the anti-apartheid movement and liberation for Palestine now, but there's some similarities there, and we're on that track where we're getting to a point where Israel is just so isolated right now, and it's going to happen. It's inevitable. We don't know when, but it's inevitable that this will change.